Okay, good evening, everybody. I call to order this regularly scheduled meeting of the Elgin City Council on the 6th day of April in the year of 2021 at 7 p.m. We're going to go to roll call. Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, we'll start with you.
Brasher here.
Gonzalez here.
Ramirez here.
Henson here. Vega here.
Prince here.
Ibis here.
Dennis here.
Let the record show we have a quorum and all council members are present. We'll bow our heads, please, for invocation. Lord, give us strength, wisdom, and patience. Let us listen with our hearts as well as our minds and our ears. Let us take in mind what our citizens want, and let's take in mind the best decisions that we can make for this community. In this we pray, amen.
Amen.
Okay, if we'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas Flag Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Next on the agenda is public comments. Before we go any further in public comments, I want to talk a little bit about the forum that we've been using. As being a new mayor, I've gone back and I've looked at several online meetings that we've had, especially the public comment section, which is what I was interested in. And I've noticed that a few things have not been done correctly. I'm not holding public comments to 3 minutes as they're supposed to be. There's a reason for the public comments to be 3 minutes because there could be a lot of people signed up. And we're asking everyone when they do submit a public comment that hold yourself to 3 minutes. At 2 minutes and 45 seconds, if you're still talking, I'm gonna say 15 seconds left. And that way you know if you're doing a public comment that you need to start wrapping up your comments. Also, I want to read, and this is on every agenda what I'm reading here. It says, speaker comments are limited to 3 minutes. No formal action can be taken by the city council on items not posted on the agenda. Speakers must address their comments to the mayor or presiding officer rather than to an individual council member or member of staff. So whereas we've had some public comments where the commenter has spoken to the camera, has spoken to staff that's sitting on the side, et cetera, the public comments are directed to me as mayor and the council here on the dais. All speakers must limit their comments to the specific subject matter noted on the public comment form and refrain from personal attacks or derogatory comments directed at any council member, member of staff, or other individual or group. So if you have something to say, we want to hear it. If you have a concern, we want to hear it. But please refrain from personal attacks or derogatory comments. If I ask you, as the mayor here, if I ask you to please stop the direction that you're going in, I would like for you to do so. Okay, let's go to public comments. When I call your name, if you'll come up, state your name and address, and then I'll start the clock for the 3 minutes. Grant Hennig.
Might be in first. So we cover all of our items at the public comment section?
You can.
Instead of in the item itself?
You can do it in however you want to do it, Mr. Hennig.
Okay, I think I'll wait until the item,
You'll wait to the individual items.
if that's all right.
Item 6 and item 8, according to what
Yes,
you
sir.
wrote. Okay.
Okay.
Stephanie Lipke.
Good evening. Stephanie Lipke, 112 North Main, here in Elgin. Mr. Mayor, with the recent road rage incident on Highway 95, I was looking for more information from the Elgin Police Department Facebook page. I was surprised that I was unable to comment on the page. I had been blocked. To my knowledge, I've never once posted on that public government forum. I reached out to you and to the city manager and to Charlie Crossfield, the city attorney, regarding this violation and have yet to receive a response. You may not like or agree with my statements in social media forums, but in America, we are entitled to freedom of speech under the First Amendment. Trying to silence my voice by blocking me from commenting on the EPD official government Facebook page is an ACLU lawsuit in the making. Mr. Mayor, you and the city attorney have been made aware of this issue via email. At close of business today, this has not been rectified. All of you made a conscious choice to become public figures. This is what you signed up for. The good, the bad, the ugly. You can legally silence these who don't agree with you. You can't do this. This is America. If you can't handle the opposition, then I suggest you resign now. The First Amendment supersedes your feelings and the public's response to your actions. If you persist in marginalizing and silencing your opposition in government and social media forums, then you will be held accountable under the law. Early voting starts in 13 days. The citizens of Elgin will have their say, and the recent actions of this council and the city manager will be on their minds when they vote. I promise you that. It's time to put away your petty grievances and do the job that you were elected to do. This council has complete oversight over Tom Mattis, and it's time you do what's right for your constituents and for the city of Elgin. Mr. Mattis continues to expose our city's financial stability to lawsuits with his actions. He has already proven.
Ms. Lipke, I'm going to stop you there, please.
You're gonna.
Yes, I'm going to stop you right there.
Freedom of speech. Okay, all right.
Thank you. Okay, Gina Carter?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Gina Carter, representing the Elgin Chamber of Commerce. Today I'm here representing our Board of Directors, and we recently, the board recently took a vote and agreed to move forward with the Western Days planning. As you may know, the Western Days Festival in 2019 celebrated 50 years. In 2020, we of course had to cancel that event, and as much as we were disappointed, it also was a financial problem or challenge to the chamber. That is our largest fundraiser. We've got through the year, and we've had lots of feedback from businesses, from our chamber members, from community members, that we're ready to continue on with Western Days planning. We think we can do a safe event. We have had guidance from the Texas Festival and Fairs Association and also from CDC. And we are coming here today with the understanding our board did vote, but part of that vote was that we understand that we need the support and the approval from the city to allow us to have that event. As we know, and we're very appreciative and want to go on public record to say, for 50 years, we all know that that event would not happen without the chamber, without the city support. It's been a great partnership and been an event that we're all very proud of, and we would like to see that continue. So I know that it is on consent agenda, but if there's any specific questions, I am here and willing to answer any of those for you. Thank you.
Thank you. John Kraft? Would you rather wait, sir, to the agenda item? Okay. Okay. Moving on in the agenda, let's go to the city manager's report. Mr. Mattis, if you'll start, please.
Do you want to do public comments on this first, Mayor? Are there any on this?
On item number 6, no, 8. Yes, item number 6, Grant.
Thank you. I'm Grant Hennig. I live at 1116 Robin Road here in Elgin. And I just wanted to reiterate what I said at the last meeting. I'm very concerned about the $25 million you're about to go into debt, or if y'all set that limit. I know that's not what you have to do, but those, I would highly, highly urge to be only used for emergency purposes. If it's a water, wastewater issue, if it's a police department issue, if you got dangerous parks that actually need repair, the existing parks, I totally agree with those emergency funds to be issued to fix that stuff and repair that stuff, because that's a danger and safety issue for our city and our citizens. But I don't agree without having a vote from the city to expand your park system, especially on a railroad track. I mean, it's highly dangerous to have a park next to a railroad. I would not want my kids playing in that park and running back and forth across the railroad track between a playscape and a splash pad. I mean, it seems like a really dangerous place to put in a park and encourage kids to go with an active rail line. So that's just what I want to say again about the bonds that you're about to issue in the next couple of months. So just please limit those to emergency issues that do need to be fixed and repaired, but don't approve frivolous stuff that I think the voters should have to vote to approve. If you have a park issue, you want to build a new city hall, I think it should be on a bond vote by the citizens of Elgin before y'all do that. But thank you.
Here we go. All right, thank you, Mayor. This item is again for another review of our proposed issuance of certificates of obligation and refunding bonds. This is an item that we've been talking about now for a couple of months with the council. Just a reminder, it's just under 26 million is the not to exceed amount the council has established. That amount cannot increase between now and when we make the final decision. 9 million of that is for general government purposes that will the debt can be serviced on that without an increase in the debt portion of the property tax rate. And then we've got about $14 million worth of projects in the water and wastewater fund that at the maximum at this point that we anticipate the monthly water bill to go up would be about $8 a month. These are the numbers themselves. We'll touch on them a little bit more as we continue to go through the project. I think it's important to also reiterate that certificates of obligation and debt are the methodology that all local governments use to fund capital projects. And if you look at our basic numbers, you'll see why we have to issue debt to afford these projects. Our entire budget for the whole city, operating budget for the whole year, is less than $19 million. The general fund alone is about $9.5 million. The utility fund, this is the combined water and wastewater fund, is $5.6 million. So obviously with those numbers, there's no way that we can afford to make these improvements out of our operating budget each year. The only way we can afford them is to issue debt in the manner that we've described. Particularly in a situation where we have a rapidly growing community that we can't possibly keep up with these capital needs without using this mechanism to afford them. It's also important to understand that we're combining the proceeds from this debt issuance with other available funds, as shown here, where the citizens of Elgin will actually receive almost $43 million worth of capital improvements throughout the city by utilizing some of our reserve funds and these debt proceeds, but more importantly, almost $12 million contributed from private sources, from private developers that will support these projects, as well as almost $6 million in grant funds. I think it's also important to keep in mind that if we're really conscious about trying to keep the impact on the tax rate and our water and sewer rates to a minimum, it's important to know that there's 5 projects here that are major projects that I'd consider most of them necessary to do right now, represent almost 3/4 of the entire issue. So making small cuts, cutting out some of the smaller projects, frankly, won't have an appreciable difference impact on the individual taxpayer or ratepayer. And certainly a big part of that discussion has been, continues to be what improvements we might make in response to the recent winter storm event we had at the water plant that affected our water plant. So these are the projects, that, again, that we've gone through this list now with council. We've talked about them in these council briefings here, and the council meetings, and now this is our third public meeting to talk in detail about the different projects. We have a few that we're going to focus in on tonight that we've been asked to do by the city council. I will say in the utility end, both in the water fund and the sewer fund, from the staff perspective, we do consider all of these projects to be must-dos, that if the city is going to be in a position to provide the services that we're compelled to provide for our growing community, for the developments that we have occurring, we're going to have to make these water improvements in our water system. And then certainly the big ticket item is our wastewater plant project expansion that is definitely a must-do for us to avoid problems in the future, servicing the growth that we're compelled to do. So just a couple items before we get into tonight's discussion, detailed discussion I wanted to update you on, just so we're clear on everything. The wastewater treatment plant project itself is actually, as council knows, we've awarded a bid on that project and it's scheduled to start. The contractor will begin mobilizing and will be on site at the beginning of May. So we'll actually be starting this project in the next 30 days on site. Now, keep in mind that we've already got about $12 million set aside from prior CO issues that's devoted to this project. So we're not getting, just want to make clear, although we're starting the project, we're not getting ahead of the financing. The lion's share of that money that will come from the CO issue itself. One thing that we mentioned, just wanted to clarify that we had a little typo that's been repeated in the information provided on the wastewater lines upsize, which we're going to talk more in detail about tonight. We've had so many different developments come in and they've changed their names at different times. We got a little confused. So this says Heritage Lakes, but it's actually Harvest Ridge, which is actually the Altessa development by Braun, but the sign out front is going to be Harvest Ridge. So just want to make that clarification. And then one other item I wanted to make sure we're clear on for council, that the council needs to stipulate the specific amount of the issue actually prior to the May 18th date. As we've talked about, the May 18th date is the scheduled final public hearing and final adoption by the council or approval of the issuance of the debt. But in order to be in a position to have the finite numbers that night, the council will have to stipulate at some time prior to the 18th what the exact amount is. So we've got at least 2 more council meetings before then, and of course we can have other meetings we need to, but I want to make sure that everybody understands we can't wait until literally the last minute on the 18th to make changes in the number. So with that, we're going to give a little more detailed presentation on these 6 projects tonight. These are all projects that we've been asked by council members to have a little more detail on tonight, and the city engineers here tonight to kind of walk us through each one of these. I would just, for the record, all of these projects, well, 5 of these 6 projects are in the approved 5-year capital plan, have been in the capital plan for a couple of years, where we've had lengthy discussion about those with council, public hearings, public meetings. So these are all known projects that we've identified a long time ago. They're just time to, some of them to pull the trigger on now. So,
Tom, let me just say something before we go. Council, I know you guys know this already, but as Tom was mentioning, we have roughly 3 meetings left to discuss these COs, and for the public to also make their comments on any projects that they feel strongly about one way or the other. But the thing that we need to be doing is making notes on projects that we know we want, probably without much further discussion. We've already discussed them, or stuff like the water treatment plant expansion that we know we have to have. And we also need to be making notes on items that you're concerned with, because we don't want to get to the last meeting and then still not really have an idea of where we want to go. We're going to have a public forum and we'll announce that date, or Mr. Mattis will announce that date, or I can if you want, whenever you're ready, Tom. We're going to have a public forum for the public to come and make their comments in plenty of time before we make any decisions. But let's make sure that we're doing what the homework that we need to be doing, so that when we get to that point, it's a smooth operation in figuring out we want this or we don't want this. All right, thank you. I'm sorry.
Thanks, Mayor. Okay, so first, we're just going to run down this list, and we intend this to be, this part to be a discussion with the council. So as Bo walks us through these projects, feel free to jump in with questions or comments as we go. The first is water well number 10. This is actually an item has been in the 5-year plan now for a number of years, and I think it's indicative of some of the issues we're trying to address now. This is actually a well that no longer functions. We have a well in the ground that hasn't functioned for 2 years, 3 years.
It's at least been about 2 years.
That simply needs to be reconstructed and put back into service. So it seems like a pretty straightforward situation for us, but Bo, go ahead.
So again, just kind of a broad overview on y'all's particular system. Generally, the city of Elgin has always operated with 4 operational water wells at all times. Essentially, 2 water wells is what the plant needs in order to function on a day-to-day basis. That's how much water you have to produce from the ground in order to run the plant, in order to put things into the city system. Those who haven't seen the water or moved here recently, those who have been around for a long time know that we've seen the red water that's come through the system, some of the smells and stuff like that. The city's always had 4 wells where they can rotate the operation of them, so they're not overworking any particular wells, because essentially you're pumping water as fast as it's coming into the hole, and eventually you start pumping that down. So they've always had those wells to rotate. It wasn't very long ago, probably unbeknownst to council, that the city actually got down to the point where it only had 2 operational wells. So you literally had 2 wells that had to be operational because 2 of them were out of service. And so right now, the situation we've been kind of treading water over the last couple of years is essentially you have 1 backup well at any given time. If 1 well goes down, you essentially have exactly what you need in order to keep up with the production for the city for water. Water well 10 is the oldest well that's been there. It was once drilled and it was producing probably close to 800 GPM. Over time, wells start to deteriorate unless you rehab them, you pull them, you try to re-drill them, you try to redo the pumps for so long. But it had deteriorated almost to the point where it was only producing a little less than 600 GPM. That's very typical of a life cycle of a particular well. This particular one hasn't been in operation. You just drilled 16, which is a great well. It's overproducing water. 14 is still producing. 15 is still producing. Prior to 16 being drilled, 15 it had been almost a decade. Was your last newest well. So the city is kind of a little bit falling behind the curve. One, because the wells have actually been producing really well and have been going longer and longer. Just with technology, the drillers trying to keep up with them on a maintenance standpoint or a maintenance plan. But right now you are rotating 3 different wells. 2 of them are on the 18-inch. 1 is directly into the plant. You don't have a secondary directly into the plant. So similar to the winterization and some of the issues that have happened before, if you lose those 2 on the 18-inch transmission line, you're just physically, you're down to a single well that has another way into the plant. And so this project would be replacing that water well tow that's been out of service for a while.
If I could add real quick, Mayor, I'd just say too that it's important. One of the things that I've come to, as Bo knows, really appreciate coming to Elgin, that I didn't know there was an area in Central Texas that had robust water supply available, and Elgin is sitting right on top of that. So our ability to continue to produce water, good water in a quality way and a good supply, actually it will work out to be a huge attribute for the city as we continue to grow. So that's part of what we're focused on as well.
The city has rights to more water than you can practically produce at this point in time with the wells that you have. So you've secured water rights through the groundwater district for the future of Elgin. In the future, you can't even come close right now to actually producing that amount of water, which is good for the future. There are a lot of other entities that are in a completely different Ours is really on that resilience and just some of the quality of the water, and you're at a vulnerable state. You know, if you did have a catastrophic event that were to happen, you're down, you could potentially be down to 2 wells that have to run in order to produce the water, you know, in the general day.
So, let me have Bo, how big is this well compared to the other three?
Water well 10 currently, when it was producing, it would be the smallest of your 4 wells.
Considerably smaller?
Your general average is around 1,000 GPM. The water well 10 was down to around 600 when it finally went out.
Have we had an occasion where, you say we need 2 operational wells, have we had an occasion where one went down?
Within the last 12 months, you were at a point in time where you only had 2 functional wells, and actually you dropped down to 1. We had some emergency services come in and get another well up, but you are at the point where we are getting 24-hour service or emergency services in order to meet the demand of water potentially.
Is it equipment?
Equipment, if you can visualize, you're basically drilling a hole that's 1,000 to 1,200 feet down in the ground, and you're dropping a pump all the way down there, and it's a mechanical piece of equipment. Has a motor, runs off electricity. They have wear and tear. It's basically a steel shaft all the way down. You have electrolysis that's constantly beating up that steel shaft over time. That has to be pulled out. You have to purge the wells every so often. So there is a maintenance methodology to keep wells producing for as long as you possibly can. But even regardless of all the maintenance you could do, wells will eventually decrease in the product that they provide to you just based on where the water is in the ground over time.
So in your professional opinion, this well number 10 is a must-do?
It's a must-do, because tomorrow you could lose a well significantly, cave in, you could lose the casing, you could lose the bearing, and you'd be in an emergency situation where you're running 2 wells to try to keep up eventually with water.
And city staff feels the same way, Tom?
Yes, sir.
Council, anybody have any questions or comments on well number 10? Yes, Dennis?
So what will be
Of
the
course.
capacity once this gets drilled?
Based on the strata and where we think well number 10 is, we'll probably go a little bit deeper. Again, the city has plenty of water rights, and so the intent would be to replace water well 10, but to tap into your overall water rights and try to be in that producing well of 1,000 to 1,200 GPM.
The estimated cost is,
It's around
900.
Yeah, 900,000 plus or minus. That's based on, again, you just completed well 16. It just went over past the 1-year mark. And based on those costs, based on what some of those well drillers are doing in a given year, the cost is pretty steady for the well itself. The only change would really be what steel prices are on the day that you decide to award that particular bid.
how long a project do you project this to be if we do it?
Going through the permitting process through the groundwater district, doing the design, bidding it out, it generally is a year from start to finish, a little bit longer. Contractor drilling the well, and then he's responsible for making sure that it gets up to that production amount of whatever that GPM that we feel like we can pull from the strata. But it's not a well that you would do in your backyard. They generally, the quickest time frame from the moment council says begin the engineering design to the time that it's drilled, that's been 12 months as fast as possible. Generally, you're probably talking closer to 18.
Okay, thank you. Council? All right, Tom.
So I do have a question, I'm sorry. So with the development coming in, are we still going to be able to handle the capacity demand? Or how much of that is Aqua and how much of it's Elgin?
So, depending on conversations, a lot of the current development that's coming in immediately right now today is on Aqua. Now, obviously, council, you're well aware that you have the 1.5 MGD that Aqua is pulling from you guys to actively serve that new development on a day-to-day basis. We had signed that agreement where you were essentially selling water to Aqua as a wholesale water supply corporation in order to allow development to continue to come into Elgin. So it is it's Aqua's responsibility, but you are actually providing the water in order to allow those subdivisions to come in. The plant currently, 2 wells, going maximum capacity is what the plant can treat. You're generally running the plant anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day, plus or minus. 12 being towards the high end, in the middle of summer. You don't have any water restrictions or anything. It's pump until you want, run your sprinklers as much as possible in Elgin. But ultimately, you have plenty of water rights. You just don't have enough straws in the ground to actually pull out as much water as you need. And at some point in time, you will go to the point where you don't have enough treatment to treat as fast as you want to provide water. You're not at that point yet.
What 2 wells do we normally use?
It is a pretty standard rotation.
Oh, it is?
It is 14, 15, and 16.
Okay.
The reason for that, again, is just because of y'all's water quality. Each well is a little bit different characteristics, and you have to flush them so many times. So the longer you let that water sit there stagnant, you're not actually producing from the well, means more time for city staff and maintenance where they're literally having to flush the well before they can actually send that water to the
Okay.
treatment. So I would say standard operating city staff, it's every 2 to 3 days. They're trying to rotate through the wells at any given time on a pretty regular basis.
And once this well is going, it would just fit in the
It
rotation?
would fit into the rotation.
Council?
I've
Yes.
got,
Yep.
I was just wondering, is this the best, because basically you're drilling a new well.
Correct.
Is this the best location to drill a well in our water?
As far as
Table?
what Tom was kind of alluding to, the Cruiser Wilcox, where you guys are pulling a lot of your water, it's not like the Edwards Aquifer, or it's not some sanctioned event. This is where you guys have your water rights. It's a very, very good producing well. There's a lot of entities out there that would love to put soda straws into the Cruiser Wilcox just because of the vast amount of water that is available there for the foreseeable future. When you start factoring in things as transport and pipelines and stuff like that, I don't think you're really gonna find a much better location. Yes, there's always gonna be some kind of issues with there's not many wells that you turn on and drink straight out of the faucet that are out of their groundwater. But when you look at all of that, it is a good location. All the hydrogeologists, the groundwater district, so on and so forth, Aqua as the largest water supply corporation in the country, rural water supply area. If you can pull water, it's a good area.
Okay, but it's not gonna be another direct tie-in?
We would be replacing essentially water well 10 as close as we could, but going down a deeper strata to pull water from. Again, the wells will deteriorate with the casing, so the cost of trying to pull the casing and put it in the exact same location as opposed to drilling, even if you're 50 or 100 feet over to the side and putting in brand new casing, that cost is a lot cheaper than you trying to pull everything back up out of the same hole and go right back down into the same hole. And that's kind of where you are with water well 10.
Thank you.
I got something then, and this is probably not for right now, you could probably give this to us later, right? But just hearing all the discussion about the water well, the casing and everything, can we get a report on the other wells, the age of them? Is there a general, like they'll last so many years, what they look like, so that we can think about the future, right? This one obviously sounds like we need to replace this one, get a new well going, but
Right.
can we get that information on the rest of the wells so that maybe we know, hey, in the next 3 years, 5 years, 7 years, that one's gonna need it too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We can provide what those are. I can tell you that nothing has been, water well 10 was drilled prior to 2000. 14, 15, and 16 have all come on after 2000.
Okay.
To kind of give you an idea of age. 16 just came on. 15 was, again, probably about 2008-ish. 2014 was closer to 2000, 2001-ish. So kind of tells you you're almost every 10 years plus or minus, the city would be looking to drill well to keep that 4 rotation. As the city grows, how many redundant wells do you keep there in case one goes offline? Because eventually the plant will need 3 wells going on at the same time. Then you really only have 1 backup depending on growth with the city. But we can definitely get you all the information on when the wells are drilled. I have all the logbooks, any kind of information you want to see on there. I know city staff will always take you out there to actually see them in the ground. It's not a whole lot to look at, but they're all out there.
Yeah, it's not very exciting. I'd suggest, Alice, that that, we've got the 5-year plan discussion coming up here in a couple months. I think that'd be appropriate for that. Again, I mean, well 16, that's how that happened.
Yes.
It was in the 5-year plan, we came up, so I think we'll be ready to talk about that then. We can put that together.
Good comments, Council.
Okay.
Anybody else have anything?
We'll go on to the next one. All right, the next one was the FM 1100 water main line. This is another one that's been on our radar for a while, but even since we plugged it in, we continue to see more development out there, and the needs actually increased greater for this project.
So a little bit of what Tom was talking about, predecessors are much smarter than me, that was city engineer here at Elgin. They put in a lot of robust infrastructure to kind of look at what the future of Elgin would be. The ideal has always been that Elgin would be looped with a 12-inch water line around the entirety of the city. The city has self-financed. We've done numerous grant projects to continue this loop around the city. It's ultimately essential, especially as we're coming to this particular area with all the growth happening out on the County Line Road, is making sure that we have some of the larger diameter pipelines tied in. One, it provides excellent pressure. It also provides the fire flow that's going to be needed to be provided because you are subdivisions, them coming in as you expand. The other portion of this one, and the reason we particularly picked it as well, is FM 1100. The concept plan has since been approved by TxDOT. We know exactly where the lines are supposed to go for the future. When that project comes into its creation, the city will be responsible for removing all of your lines out of the right-of-way and relocating them if they're in any kind of conflicts at the city's expense. That's part of, working or being within the TxDOT right-of-way. So based on the development, this would still be servicing a lot of peppergrass and other things that are coming in along FM 1100 that are part of your CCM. So this isn't an idea that you're going to be helping Aqua. Surely it helps with the 1.5 NGD that you are selling. And they are residents of Elgin, regardless if they are on Aqua water supply. So this is essentially extending that infrastructure to get it to the point where it can tie back into the city system. Ultimate goal would be to have a loop around the city that's tied from point A to B, essentially encompassing on a 12-inch. The last projects the city have done with this 12-inch line would be over there off of Fisher Street, south of 290 across from Ramirez. That was done through a series of grant projects to bring in that section over there.
The 290's already done that way?
Say that again?
290, is it?
Yeah, so that 12-inch basically goes all the way down to 95 and kind of dead ends and ties into some small lines, but that 12-inch goes all the way to the plant on Cleveland Street and essentially ties back into a 12-inch.
Okay.
It goes all the way down to 90, past Panda Express. There's a 12-inch that circles all the way around to ACC, all the way up County Line Road, and starts to circle back FM 1100. There's some other portions in town that are there. So essentially, future growth and existing growth, just that fire protection, is you gotta have those larger diameter lines. The city has done everything it can with city staff, is you no longer allow 6-inch lines to come in with developments. Everybody's gotta be 8 inches or larger. You're pushing those projects onto the developers and the people that come in and impact your cities. But there are certain areas where the city is gonna only be the one that's gonna be able to bring it in.
And I'd just add that, again, as all our conversations about growth that even since we've started this now, we have peppergrass on the ground there on the corner, but I don't know how to describe it, the track coming back to town on the north side that's been for sale for a while. Developers bought that. We've met with them. They're talking about another 600-home development going in that location. So we just continue to see these projects come forward that we're going to be required to serve.
It will help tie into the school essentially. The school has a very short little piece of 12-inch, and they're right on the verge of just barely meeting their fire flows because of what they were able to tap into the city and take across. You also have the nursing home facility. They face some of the same struggles there just with that system not being extended at that time to tie into them.
Council? I asked for these two in particular to be brought up because it's important that not only that we're sure of what we're looking at, but that the public has a chance to listen and understand, because these are high-money projects. They're both, you know, just a little bit under $1 million, so.
Okay, the next on our list, I only had that show, but the next on our list is what we've labeled as the wastewater line, as I said before, upsizing. A little update we've had on this one is that the number that we had included in the proposal for this was, dang it, I was gonna have it here, 800? 950. 950, and this was in the general government, mainly because of the big portion of this is to support stormwater drainage along there. Well, since we've started this effort, since our last meeting, we've actually, the projects, we've worked with the developers, got the actual bids. So these are the actual numbers and the specific projects that we had in this category, which amount to basically about $500,000. So that as far as what we need to have, that this too is, we consider this a must-do because this is development that's happening on the ground and includes some commitments we've already made under our development agreements to complete this project. But it does mean that if we stuck only to these projects, we'd have about $450,000 extra or left over that we could devote to other projects. And I'll just use that as a moment to say that as we go through these numbers, I assume council knows on virtually every project, with the exception of maybe being the sewer plant, because we have a specific bid on that. We've tried to, like in the budget, we tried to be what we consider on the conservative side to make sure we have enough money in each case. And what that also enables the council to do, that for example, if we keep this number at 950, it only costs us 500, then at a future date, that would be an additional $500,000 that the council could then devote to a different project that would qualify under this bond issue. So admittedly, some of the numbers may be a little bit on the high side of what we anticipate, just like we're saying about the water and sewer rate increase we've projected. That I don't really think even if we fund the whole thing, it'll truly be that amount. It'll be something less than that. But so again, as we talk through this need, I just wanted you to be aware that we do have a little room in this particular project where we could reduce the amount. But again, I think council should consider creating some financial room for itself in the future to make decisions about other projects, because as we all know, as big as this issue is, it certainly doesn't address all our needs moving forward. So with that, Bo, can you just talk about what these projects are?
So the first one, Peppergrass, the 60-inch storm sewer to go through. When we laid out the preliminary design with council for what County Line Road has been, and it's been around for 2 decades now, if I go back to some of the cost estimates. We decided that the most fiscal feasible way for the city to do it and most responsible way was to break up the drainage area rather than try to bring all the drainage down County Line Road and discharge it to 290, was to essentially break it up into phases, take the drainage and take it over to Elm Creek in the 3 different phases. Which that does is it saves you the size of the infrastructure that you're actually having to put it into the ground, and significant cost savings with the amount of stormwater we're talking about in the millions of dollars. As this development came in, they were willing to negotiate with the city. They provided all the engineering design. They paid for the city to do all the inspections on the actual line, but they were willing to, based on the hydrology that was required for County Line Phase 1, they were gonna put this line in parallel to their own existing line and cut through the entire subdivision and discharge to Elm Creek, which that allows the city to do is you're not going in and tearing up roads in order to put in that storm drainage line at a future time, because at the time we didn't have a specific date when County Line Road would be done. You were not gonna have to deal with TxDOT at a future date on FM 1100 by trying to run your storm sewer down TxDOT right away, which would have been in a conflict. So a 380 agreement was worked out with the developer to reimburse him for the cost of putting in the 60-inch. Those who are unfamiliar, developers, they can go through very strict direct negotiations with contractors as opposed to public bidding, which tends to lead to better pricing overall. So they essentially absorbed all the mobilization, all the costs for the contractor, the inspection, to do it to the city's criteria, to put it in for this cost. It's probably, on the minimal side, probably about half of what the city would pay to go in and do this particular project as a standalone project related to County Line Road.
Has the description of this project changed in the last 2-3 weeks? Why was I thinking this was we were doing something that we didn't need to do only in hopes of getting reimbursed at a later point in time?
I think you might be talking about the two sanitary, the next two
Right,
projects.
About what?
The next two
the next two.
projects, the Peppergrass Sanitary and Harvest Ridge Sanitary.
Okay, I
Just
just
go ahead
didn't
and
get there
walk-
yet? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
walk through those.
I'm sorry.
So Peppergrass, the 38,777, very similar, that is the upsizing of this sewer line. Essentially, they're carrying a new sewer line through the subdivision. They're only responsible for putting in the ground a certain size sewer line only for their development. That's all the city can make them do. The city takes advantage of the fact that they're already gonna be digging a hole with a contractor to say, instead of putting in their case, an 8-inch line, let's put a 12-inch line, which is also carrying flows from like Homestead subdivision and future Eagles Landing phases, to put in that. And essentially, all you end up paying for is a little bit extra on the labor and really a difference in the pipe size, because they're already having to pay for all of everything else to go in for the minimal size. So the city is basically contributing pennies on the dollar to get the infrastructure in the ground that you ultimately need for the future growth, or in this case, a growth that we know is essentially coming.
We'll keep going, then we'll circle back.
Very last one, very similar, Harvest Ridge. Currently, you guys have a 24-inch sanitary sewer line that stops at the south side of FM 1100. They're responsible for extending the sewer line up to service their development. Again, they only need X amount of capacity, which means they only need a certain diameter of pipe. In their case, it was a 12-inch. If you've seen the city's sewer CCN, the area that you're supposed to essentially provide sewer service territory to, it goes well beyond Harvest Ridge to the north. And so, very similar to the discussion before with that particular developer, the city said, you're gonna pay to put in the 12-inch line, all the labor to dig the holes and everything else. The city's gonna merely pay the difference in the price between the 12-inch and the 24-inch, because you know you're gonna need a 24-inch ultimately for future growth as it continues north of Harvest Ridge with other developments. The city's recoup ultimately at a later date is going to be through those impact fees, because you are actually putting in additional capacity to the city system.
Just virtually like every other project, there's an element to, this is another one where we're investing funds now that much of this money through development agreements or through our impact fees, the city will eventually recover, will eventually get paid back. It's basically a concept where we're fronting the developer, we're fronting the project now to avoid that. And for example, the Homestead or the Peppergrass sewer line, I mean, to your point, Bo, theoretically, we could make each developer put their own line in the ground, and we'd have 3 sewer lines along the County Line Road, which obviously doesn't make much sense for any of us. In all cases, this is a more cost-effective method, but the truth is, in the end, if our impact fees are set properly, then the city will eventually recover this each time a house gets built. And once they're at total build-out, just like with the Harvest Ridge mud, the city will recover all this money and then some.
Alvis, did you have,
So if I understand correctly, then we have a responsibility to have that later, right? I mean, if we didn't do this right now, and the smaller pipe is not really sufficient later because all the growth and everything, would we have to go and do it?
Yeah,
anyway?
new development would come specifically right next to you, and the city would be scrambling to figure out a way to serve it. You do have the CCN, Certificate of Convenience and Necessity, which essentially says this is our service territory for sewer, this is our service territory for water within the city, which basically means you don't necessarily have to service someone, but they're within your territory, you really should. And that's one of the ways the city controls development around it is because you're the only one who could provide sanitary sewer for the ETJ of the city of Elgin. Is you're the only one who has the right per the state to provide sanitary sewer within that area. Water is a little different. You share with Aqua depending on exactly where the location is. So ultimately, yes, a developer coming on, Tom's right, if they're way out, they pick a certain cost, but you don't want to have 3 different parallel lines next to each other. It's pretty common practice that the city, if you can negotiate the upsizing and you're only paying for essentially materials at that point in time, that's a much more cost-effective way in economics, because now you're maintaining 1 sewer line. Well, if you got 3, now you have 3 crews that are out there trying to maintain 3 different lines that are next to each other at any given time. So there, to give you an example, I believe on this project, if I quote the numbers correctly, and I can get the numbers from the city, is that 12-inch section, they're essentially paying closer to $650,000, $700,000 to extend what they actually have. The city's paying $136,000 to basically double the amount of capacity that can be in that line.
Council, questions? Thomas?
Yeah, I was wondering, back to that first bullet point, you know, the Peppergrass storm sewer line. So where's that running?
It literally goes, if you go down the entrance to Peppergrass off of County Line Road, that storm sewer is following their roadway system. And it
Okay.
already outfalls all the way to Elm Creek, the line, that direction. And they have a separate storm sewer system, essentially parallel, that was designed to carry their own system. But the city, in the agreement, basically said, hey, you're gonna be there, you're gonna be digging the ditch, it's only X amount of dollars to put this line in at the exact same time. You don't have easements to maintain, you're within your right of way, you don't have to deal with any of that at a later date when you were to build County Line Road.
But it's just running from their
County-
entrance on County Line Road,
All the way to Elm Creek.
so it's not running up and down County Line.
No, it is
Right.
essentially, if you were to go out there today, you'll see this giant great inlet that's kind of sitting there right at their entrance.
Okay, right.
Essentially, that's not gonna be a giant great inlet, that's gonna be under roadway, and it'll be a junction box. And all the other storm sewer that's built as part of County Line Road will tie into that box and go straight through that subdivision out to Elm Creek.
Okay. Because why I was a little confused here, you know, it says to handle the flows from County Line Road Phase 1, because there's a lot of flooding, you know, in that area between, you know, the high school
So
and Homestead.
And it's somewhat difficult to think about. Right now, everything is bar ditch. And so if you think about the future roadway, it's all gonna be curb and gutter with curb inlets, and all the water's gonna drop below to where you're not seeing it anymore.
Okay,
And essentially, they've already put in a lot of that underground infrastructure. They had to have a way to try to tie it in, so that's why you had the big giant inlet grate there at their subdivision, but eventually that'll all be below grade as well. And all the water that comes off of either Homestead or the high school, Eagles Landing, a little bit from Harvest Ridge, and any of the water that falls on the roadway itself will drop into inlets, go down, and then go out that 60-inch. And the reason this is a more economical solution is if you need a 60-inch for Phase 1 and you were really gonna try to carry all the water down to 290, well, Phase 2, you've gone from a 60-inch to, you know, twice that size, or 2.5. Then you go to Phase 3, now you're not talking about a 60-inch, now you're talking about 5x5 big giant box culverts. A lot more cost, a lot more maintenance over the long term.
do you know how that's gonna affect, you know, because I'm just, you know, think about the, you know, all these projects, you know, County Line Road Phase 1, it also floods down by ACC. So is it gonna push more water down there and
No,
make
this,
that problem worse?
so this, basically, all of Phase 1 will jump into this line and go straight out to Elm Creek.
Okay,
So it would no longer be traveling down County Line Road. It'll
Okay.
all be captured, basically, a little bit beyond Peppergrass's, right there at Raymond Johnson intersection.
okay,
If you wanna call that a hard break point for Phase 1.
okay,
All that water that's falling or coming off of development is gonna be in this pipe and heading out to Elm Creek.
okay.
So, will it fix the drainage problem? It will have an impact, and you'll see a lot less water in those bar ditches further south, because everything has to go that way right now. But it will handle it as phases, essentially. The next outfall would be right north of, the ACC property, is where Phase 2 would sort of finish up, and that water would go in a drainage easement across ACC property.
Thank you.
Bo, to that point on this road, the County Line Road project's like any development project, right? Literally, we can't push water downstream on anybody. Anything we change the lay of the land, just like any developer. We have to come up with a plan that captures all that water and specifically to prevent the scenario that you were talking about. We won't make it worse. Literally, we're not allowed to legally to make it worse.
Some exciting stuff in it. Bo,
Keep
thank you.
going?
Yeah,
Well, don't,
other questions?
you got more to
Yeah.
go, but don't sit down yet. Okay, these next three projects we're gonna talk about kind of as a group. Councilmember Arriaga asked for some discussion about these items. The Taylor Lane drainage, forget what we called it, the Kennedy Street, what is it? Brenham and Central. And those two projects, I think, as council knows, have both been in the 5-year plan for some time. And the third project she asked to be discussed tonight was the Austin Street parking and sidewalk. So we can talk about these again, but these are the Taylor Lane project, the Brenham project are local drainage issues that have existed for some time. I think the one thing I want to say about them is that we just remind everybody that in both cases, these projects that the city has in the 5-year plan are designed to deal with issues in the public right-of-way that's in the city system. But it's certainly the staff's viewpoint that the issues that some of the neighbors in these areas are experiencing won't get addressed just by these projects. There'll have to be some effort by the private property owners to truly address the issue there. So I just want to make sure we're clear about that. And we talked about in length before, I think the Brenham and Central drainage thing, the situation there is truthfully, if we do this improvement, we actually, without improvements along Kennedy Street, significant improvements along Kennedy Street, this could actually make that problem worse because we've fixed the bottom of the hill, but it's in between this and that. So, but at the same time, they're both definitely problem areas. Council knows we've heard about them for a long time. So I don't know, Bo, do you want to just run through them real quick? Let's do the Taylor one.
Taylor Lane.
Excuse me, I got to back up here. I'm going the wrong way.
That particular drainage project, I think that predates myself as city engineer here. It has definitely been around. It's a little bit more difficult because it's kind of a combination of TxDOT, the city, and a private property owner in order to really have a functional system the way that it needs to work. Nobody is, it's been in front of council numerous times with numerous iterations. It's just never been given the go-ahead to move forward on that particular project. So essentially, we did a drainage study. I think it's already 5 years since the last time it was submitted to council. That project's been on there. It hasn't left. It's just committing the funds to moving forward with it. But it will require significant input from TxDOT, and it will require significant working with the private property owner in order to get that drainage to work as a system that everybody would like to see for that particular area to work at the end of the day.
Are you talking about one private property owner or numerous?
Talking about one private property owner. Natural waterway essentially goes across someone's private property, trying to relocate a natural waterway across someone's private property, or in getting an easement across a private property owner that splits their property in two has been one of the reasons why it's continued to be pushed. And some council members, I know you guys probably have more history than even I do, but that's pretty much where we've been at a standstill.
Well, let's run through all three of these, and then is that all right with you? We'll circle back for comments then. Next was the Brenham Central.
So Brenham Central, again, the Central Avenue plans were actually designed. They actually went out to bid, had received bids from a contractor. Council decided not to move forward with the work on Central Avenue, but you did move forward with the work on Brenham. So those who have been on Brenham, it used to be a low water crossing, a couple police cars have been swept away there, now it's a box culvert crossing. Worked with the next land development there, the solid storage that came in and built that large ditch through there to bring it down to TxDOT. Central Avenue is the next kind of bottleneck. You have the railroad trestle there, you have all that water that comes from Second Street, you have a good box culvert system at Second Street, you've cleared out a lot of the drainage through there. Central Avenue was essentially building another box culvert structure that kind of matches the railroad trestle to put the water underneath Central instead of over top. But you do, again, have a section in there with private properties where natural drainage way goes through private property. And by doing the project on Central, you're guaranteed to have a pretty significant impact on the downstream property if there's no mitigation that is done on that particular property as well. Again, this is a long project. It has been out there for, I would say, at least 15, close to 20 years if I go back and read notes from previous engineers, discussions of this project. I will note on this one, it is currently in for a grant with the flood mitigation that would look to resolve it on the private side and the public side altogether. If you decide to wait, no guarantees on it being funded, but it has been submitted. It has also been submitted multiple times for other grants, just the Central Avenue project, and has been declined, mainly because we can't guarantee a synopsis because we can't deal with the private property owners all at once as an overall project. So that's another reason this one has kind of been sitting on the burner, well aware of it. It's been in front of council many, many times before.
And then third project is the Austin Street parking and sidewalks. Bo helped out, I think, a little bit of this, but you don't have a whole lot of involvement. It's this one is a relatively new one for the 5-year plan. I think we may have just put this in a year or so ago, and this has a lot to do with the Rivers building being converted to multifamily use and our continued conversion of downtown areas for residential use. Need some parking. I would say on this project, we've had some kind of casual conversation about it may be possible if we move forward for the city forces to do some of this work, maybe the whole project. So that would reduce the cost. But yeah, this is just another project that definitely will need to be done at some point as we continue to see these the housing units get occupied downtown. We're going to have continuing demand for more parking downtown. But unlike the other projects, this is a relatively new one as far as the 5-year plan goes. Bo, do you have any more on that?
I'd just say that just shows you how successful your Main Street has been. I mean, if you're having trouble parking, the businesses and the people moving into the community, it's an inevitable problem if you're successful with bringing people into that part of the city. It's not uncommon in a lot of Main Street community cities similar to Elgin struggle with the same thing, is trying to find ways to do the parking to address that. It's a good problem to have, but at the same time, it's one that would have to be addressed eventually.
Councilmember Arriaga, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I didn't recall the private property owner issues, and I think that's why I wanted to hear about it again.
Okay. Anybody else? Council?
I guess I would just say that I'd add to this, just to follow up what I said earlier, if, one of the issues of doing a debt issuance like this, where sometimes you try to be really specific and really tight on the dollar amounts, then you're really restricted on what you can do in the future. And you're not able also to absorb any cost overruns you might anticipate. It could very well work out that we could find ourselves in a year or two when we've done all the other projects on the list that we might have some money to devote to these projects. It's just important to understand we've got these other issues that make it a little bit of a difficulty to move forward immediately like we will be doing on all the other projects. So Mayor, I think that's the extent of the staff's presentation about the COs tonight. We, as I've said, you've talked about, we've tried to go over most of these. We stand ready to do the same review if there's any other projects lingering, but that we need more more discussion about, but,
Okay, and next meeting, we'll have 3 or 4 different other projects listed under the COs for us to get more information on. Anybody else have anything before we move on this? Okay, John?
thanks, Mo. I could just say one thing, Mayor, just to reiterate what you said. I think I would just agree that I'm assuming the staff's interpreting, I guess, so far that, frankly, the biggest part of this project list, the council generally supports, and we're on the same page on. So if that's not the case, we need to know that right now. But I think it would help the discussion and everything we're doing the sooner we can whittle this down to the ones we're still thinking about, I think I'll just say I think that'd be best for everybody at this point, so.
And let's not forget, we are going to set a public forum, a public hearing for anyone to come and also give their viewpoints, and we'll announce that in plenty of time. Okay?
Thanks, Mayor. Next item I have on my report is the follow-up on our kind of ongoing discussion about certain neighborhood and traffic and safety upgrades. As council recalls, this is something we've been talking about for the last 3 months, I guess, or so, where there were 4 projects that were identified as concerns by area neighborhood residents, and the staff was asked to look into each one of these and make a recommendation in each case. We've done that with 2 of the projects, and council approved moving forward on the Hillside project and South Avenue A. But we have 2 more projects that we're here to give, I consider, kind of a final report on tonight, and we just need some direction from council on how we want to proceed. And this is another one we may need Bo to come up and speak to, but we'll circle back to. One was the Houston Street, Madison Street intersection area. We had initially looked at this and thought we might be able to achieve some traffic calming out there with the strategic placement of some stop signs. So we authorized the engineer to move forward with an engineering study to see if the traffic counts out there met the warrants to support the placement of stop signs. And a copy of that report is in the packet, and the conclusion was that the counts did not meet those warrants to support the placement of stop signs. That the staff's position, frankly, is almost always going to be that any traffic control device should meet the warrants, the standards of traffic engineering to support their placement. At the same time, it's always council's prerogative to make their own determination about safety, for the simple reason that it's the council should know better than, with all due respect, than the engineer what the best use of these traffic control devices are. So that's a project that we just need a decision from council on whether or not we want to proceed with the placement of signs or not. Then the other project is the Ramirez Road project that the area that we've talked about for some time. This is, I think, everyone would agree this is the area that's a little more complicated than the rest as to what improvements would serve the area best. I've shown you here, we finally got a definitive position from TxDOT on this roadway, which, basically is part of being the big dog, I guess. They kind of have it both ways, and that the road is indeed in their right of way, and that they legally have jurisdiction over that area as far as traffic control devices or improvements. At the same time, they won't be, they haven't in the past, won't be in the future, providing any financial assistance to the city to help maintain Ramirez Road. But what they have said is that so long as whatever we decide to do out there doesn't dramatically conflict with sound engineering, traffic engineering, that they'll support it have pretty much indicated as long as we're reasonable, they'll be willing to authorize whatever the council wants to do out there. So, again, just as a reminder, this was the situation where, from the staff's perspective, we had made a recommendation that we close off Avenue C's access there to 1704 and essentially make that de facto kind of cul-de-sac there at the end, or a turnaround. But it was clear in our other prior conversations that the majority council didn't really like that idea. So and I will say that we talked last time, I think, about the fact that TxDOT supported that as well, but frankly, that didn't surprise us because their goal is to, anytime they can close off an access point onto a highway, they generally go for that. So anyway, and both projects, frankly, from the staff perspective, they're ripe to move forward one or the other. So we just need some direction from
Why don't we
council.
tackle that first one,
Okay.
that Madison and Houston? Any council member, anybody want to start with that?
Yeah, Mayor, I'll start with that. This was an interesting situation, I think, first off, because the intersections there are awkward, they go way back, I guess, to definitely before our time, before any staff's time as they're working on it. At the same time, Tom, you said a couple of things, council's decision. I really think it's the residents' decision, and I know that you know that because those are the folks that have come to us with this particular problem. Where it becomes challenging to find a balance is that, I think we've known in past situations that stop signs don't always solve the problems. I think we always strive to improve the problem, and I think in this case, stop signs are probably our most cheapest option. The folks in that area asked for stop signs. They didn't ask for any more, which I think is probably to our advantage, considering that we have all, other areas that we have to consider that we may need to do more than just a stop sign. I know that we've been out there a couple of times looking at the area. We're looking at perhaps placement of stop signs at current and existing intersections. It's not like we're putting a stop sign out in the middle of a street that doesn't make any sense. So there could be some logic to what we do here. And again, I think it's at the very least, what they're asking is probably not much in the long run. I also realize that we're not necessarily at a point to where we're putting stop signs all over town, but there has been a dedicated effort at looking at this area for a little while along with all the others. And the fact that it says traffic calming, again, speaks to improvement. We're not looking to utilize stop signs to necessarily control speed, even though that is an issue. But I think that that's one difference from in the past when we were thinking about stop signs to control speed. But in this case, we're simply looking to calm traffic. And I think with the counts that you guys did, Tom, I think you were maybe speak a little bit about to the numbers of cars that were counted with the speed trailer out there, and the fact that there were quite a few cars traveling in that small area.
Yeah, we were looking at that one day. I forget, Bo, I don't know if you have that off the top of your head, but we were seeing 5,000 cars come down there, which frankly was surprising to me. Again, it's an area I don't spend a lot of time in or familiar with, but the days we were out there, there really wasn't any indication that there's that kind of traffic. But obviously the counts don't lie, and there is a significant amount of traffic that apparently comes up and down Madison there. Do you have anything on that in particular, Bo?
Why so much?
No, yeah.
No, other than what you said, you're right, Tom. It's empirical data. It's basically numbers and math to say it doesn't meet warrant. It's no different than what TxDOT does. There's an engineering standard that you look at. But council, as in the past, with this same kind of solution that's had it, that says the empirical data doesn't follow it up, the non-empirical data of, what does it mean to public safety out there, the residents that live there, do they feel like it's an improvement? That's obviously a council decision. There is a lot of traffic, even with the count counts out there. City staff did 3 different counts, 3 different directions out there in the intersections. That was all put together, put into the model, and essentially that's kind of what it puts back in. It looks at wrecks, it looks at if it's a 3-way, a 4-way, a 2-way stop, it looks at all of that and essentially, makes a recommendation just on the numbers. But to Tom's point, councils of the past have looked at that, but we rely on the council. Now, putting up stop signs, if you were to say, Bo, will this have a detrimental impact to the city to put up stop signs? I would tell you no, it would not. And then that's some of the non-empirical decisions council gets to make. I would not be up here saying, under any no circumstances to put up these stop signs. I don't think that they would have if the citizens want to see them, then it's obviously, it could be there. It is important, and Councilwoman said it, is stop signs are not meant to slow people down. It's meant to be in there for health and safety, to control traffic flows, to make traffic patterns safer, but it's not something that should be used of, we're putting up stop signs and that's gonna help slow people down. Engineering data over years and years and years shows that that's not the case per se.
So if I can just, so basically, we're talking about 6 blocks, and there's already 3 current stop signs, is that correct? 1 on each end and basically 1 in the middle?
We would be adding 3 stop signs. Essentially, we'd be turning a 3-way intersection that only has 1 stop sign into a true 3-way stop sign intersection.
That's at Madison and Houston?
And Madison and Jackson.
Jackson.
Because it's between Houston Street and I'm trying to think the next northbound street. It's a long run of roadway. And it's already kind of lays itself out to be a 3-way intersection because the next intersection is a 3-way stop sign intersection. And you already have an existing stop sign there at Jackson. The other proposed stop sign would be at Houston and Madison. And that would turn it into a true 4-way kind of stop scenario there, where right now you do have some traffic is stopping and other traffic is yielding to those who are not stopping. And it is kind of it's not your typical 4-way perpendicular street in that location. It is very off-centered as far as where people approach and do they stop or, approach the intersection with their car before actually making a turning movement.
I thought we were gonna just do it, 3-way at Houston and
Yeah,
Madison.
it would be a 3-way. Right now, it's just a 2-way.
Right.
So can we talk about that for just a minute? Because I'm concerned that there's 4 corners there, but 3 stop signs. And so those people at those 3 stop signs are gonna be stopped. And these people are gonna come, straight through on Houston. Kind of like, for me, I would say, well, where did they come from? Why didn't they stop?
Right.
And so, to me, that's more of a cross street from Houston, on Houston from Madison to Martin Luther King. It seems to me that there would be a 4th stop sign at that intersection.
And again, you could make it a 4-way stop sign. You have the stop that's coming directly from MLK already, so traffic traveling in that direction, you don't have nearly as much time to try to do the acceleration. But from a confusion standpoint, if you're just saying, hey, we're gonna make it irregardless if they can't be moving fast, and we want everybody to just know it's a 4-way stop at all times, and they're not having to make a decision from a traffic standpoint, or relying on other people to be at a stop condition, or running a stop sign per se, then you could add one in there. And similarly, non-empirical data, that's something that council can do, on this particular intersection.
So, Mary, help me understand why you think the 3-way stop there instead of 4?
Because the angle of that street, just like both say, when you come off of MLK onto Houston Street, it's just a little, you're just passing by 2 houses.
Right.
As opposed to the rest of the way is, straightway.
Yeah.
So, you don't have, and it's not, and it's always cars parked right there anyway. So when you get around those cars, you don't need to hold up traffic, because the bus comes their way also. I'm looking ahead I'm seeing traffic, because I travel it, 'cause it's my neighborhood.
Sure.
And, yeah, it just makes sense just to have just to add that 1 stop sign, because when you're on Madison going, whatever that way is, towards Houston, from 290, yeah, you can't really see to the right. You gotta, you know, swerve around to, you know, look. And if it's a stop sign over there coming down Houston towards MLK, then that way everybody can see. See, and you can see coming off of MLK.
I get it.
That's the point.
Yeah, I would just add to Mary's point of, I don't know if this picture does it justice, it's not a true four-way intersection there.
No.
That's what makes it,
Little offset.
it wasn't built right to begin with, and so you'd have line of sight problems if you tried to do a four-way stop there, I think,
Yeah.
that you almost have to stand there to look at it to see it that way.
Yeah, I get it. Okay.
Council, I think I'm gonna direct staff to go with making an ordinance for those stop signs as we discussed, and then we'll come to the vote when that ordinance comes. Because we've been discussing this now for a while, and we need to move on with it, one way or the other, and I think most of us are in agreement,
Yes.
okay?
Okay, good.
And that's a stop sign on Mason also, because Mason doesn't have anything right. Yeah, Mason needs something. If it's, yeah. You know, just roll.
And then Ramirez, I don't know if this is a simple conversation we can have tonight, or we want to revisit this in the future to keep to think about it, but I guess the main issue from the staff is we feel like we've carried the ball to where we can, and we just need, and I think that's the other part too, that in this conversation, that maybe we don't do anything out there, maybe we don't do anything but put a couple signs up, but I guess we've just reached the point where we need direction from council before we know what the next thing is to do.
Do we have any information on collision counts and that sort of thing, anywhere along there on Ramirez?
We have that information, yes, I don't have it with me.
Maybe we need to have that information for further conversation about this.
So we had 4 traffic situations, we dealt with 2. Today, we asked staff to give us an ordinance for dealing with the 3rd one. This is a very complicated issue. I know that there are some concerns, and I think the council knows my feelings on the subject. But that's a very good point for us. Let's get some of that data so that we can discuss the last
It'd be
of
good
the
if we
traffic
had a traffic
situations.
count in there too. I don't know if we have time for that.
Mayor, I just have
Yes.
another comment too. I know that the more we talked about this, we just continued to surface a couple of situations which presented issues, which again, it's all part of good discussion, but I think that there's probably some low-hanging fruit here that we can probably come to a conclusion sooner rather than later. For instance, one of the original issues and complaints for some of those folks, all of those folks living, is that you continue to have the big trucks going through utilizing that road that is not built for big trucks. So can we decide sooner rather than later? It doesn't necessarily need to be this evening, but at the very least, let's talk about signage of no-through trucks. I know that
a great
enforcing
point.
that's going to be somewhat challenging just with resources and all, but that's low-hanging fruit and something that we can possibly move on sooner rather than later. Otherwise, these folks continue to wait on our decisions, and then these things get complicated. But let's hit the original problem, which was we don't want trucks going through that area. They don't. So I think we can probably solve that sooner rather than
That's a great
later.
point.
I mean, if TxDOT calls it a driveway, it's not really a road, so.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to have trucks on your driveway.
So we'll get some more data. And, Bo, I would like for you to look at this. To me, the problem lies on the traffic going down South Avenue C, going south on South Avenue C to 1704. If we could do a half culvert and on the right-hand side of that, put a stop sign where the traffic that goes down south on South Avenue C has to physically stop, either make a right or make a left, so we don't have four different lanes meeting at the intersection. So if you could look at that, I would appreciate it for a further meeting. Can we move on, council?
Yeah, is,
Go
Mayor,
ahead.
just for clarification, is that meant to assist and improve the situation with no-through trucks, or is that in addition to perhaps
Yeah, that
signage
has
at
nothing to
city?
do with the trucks. To me, that addresses the problem where you had 4 possible lanes
Right,
meeting in one location.
Right.
But the through trucks is, I think, a gimme for all of us. I believe we all agree on that.
which means that we probably would pursue that sooner rather than later and pursue signage that's proposed here?
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
And I would just say, Tom, you might want to just redistribute the truck route plan.
Right.
At one point in time, this was on the truck route plan to not allow trucks, but council pulled it off and left it as is, so you would have to adopt, from an enforceability standpoint.
That's right.
Go put signs up there all day long, but from an enforceability standpoint, you guys would have to revisit that ordinance, which would have to go through TxDOT again as part of the official truck routes plan. It was originally there, but council pulled it off before finalization at that point.
Let me just make a point too, Bo, I know it's your job to know this stuff, but I really appreciate all the background info that you can just give us like that. It's one thing, yeah, you've been here a long time. Okay,
Did you, Thomas had a,
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Thomas, yes.
No, I was just wondering, I think that's a great idea, and we seem to all be in agreement. Is there something we could move forward tonight on that note through trucks, rather than waiting?
I think we've agreed that we're gonna ask for signage already.
Okay, so signage can be put up without,
well, to Bo's point, we'll have to
And
make,
not put up, but getting the plan ready for it.
we can have something ready in 2 weeks, next
okay,
meeting.
thank you.
Anybody else, council?
You understand any truck route has to go through TxDOT.
Right. Right, yeah, no, I just want to move.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, we'll move on then, Mayor. Just wanted to quickly review our schedule for budget and 5-year capital plan adoption. As council members know, we run this schedule by council every year, and we try to stick to the same general schedule. We're consciously pushing it back a little bit this year to, obviously, we want to do the entire budget development process with our new council. It'll take its seat in May, so we're starting a little bit later than what we typically do, but and obviously this schedule can change as council dictates in the future, but we have tried to stick to the same Tuesday night meeting kind of general format. We've got one budget work session set aside just for the 5-year plan, and 3 in this schedule for the budget itself. But obviously we can do as many work sessions as the council would prefer, and then as we get into August and September, of course, we're meeting about every week to get the process completed in conformity with the charter and state law. So I just encourage you to kind of pencil those dates in on your schedule, and we'll continue to keep you updated as we work through it. If there weren't any questions on that, we'll move on to the next item. So tonight we're starting with a new, or restarting with a practice that COVID got in the way of when we started to have to go to virtual meetings, and we're going to try to get back to having all new employees we hire appear at a council meeting, so the council, well, mainly so we can embarrass them and make them come into the meeting and stand up in front of everybody. But Amy's got 2 real important appointments we've made in the last few weeks, and so she's here to introduce these individuals to you tonight.
Well, hello, Mayor and Council and Tom. Thank you for putting us on the agenda tonight so that we can share these updates. So the City of Elgin has hired a new library director. Name is Brittany Lavenger. Come on up. So Brittany, she's been on staff for about 6 weeks now. She started at the beginning of February, and she is actually relocated from Oberlin, Ohio, to Central Texas. She has a Master's of Library and Information Science from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign and certificates in Youth Services and Special Collections. We are truly excited to add her to our team. She's tackled our library with bringing the staff on board to do a lot of new and exciting things already. And so we're glad that you guys get to officially meet her tonight. And there's Brittany.
Welcome, Brittany. Would you like to say anything?
You have to.
Hi, I'm really excited to be here. I know it's been a couple months, so I haven't met all of you, but I'm really excited about the new stuff that we're doing at the library and seeing all of you when you visit, which I hope you will once we're open again.
Thank you.
All right, and the next new staff person that we're going to introduce is Kaylee Fry, and she is our new Main Street manager for the city of Elgin. This was a new position that City Council approved and added to the budget, and in January we were authorized to start our search and find a fantastic addition to the city. And so Kaylee will be managing the downtown district in a full-time manner. And will, as a new addition to the community services team, we see huge opportunity for us to be able to grow the district even more, support our small businesses continuing to develop, additional business recruitment, and lots of partnerships between Parks and Recreation and the library with downtown and with our other partners throughout the community. I throw that in since it's a new position. But Kaylee is actually not relocating. She lives in South Austin. She's going to be looking at Elgin, but at the moment it's a very reasonable commute. And she has most recently, the chunk of her time has been with the Houston Northwest Chamber of Commerce, which served a large geographic area encompassing approximately 15 zip codes. And she was responsible for business retention and recruitment, technical training for businesses, marketing, social media, budgeting, volunteer management, and special events. Kaylee is a certified professional community and economic developer, and she holds a bachelor's degree from Texas Women's University. And we are very excited about the skill set that she brings to Elgin.
Thank you guys for having me. Appreciate the introduction. I'm not on day one, so I haven't really met anybody yet, but I look forward to getting to know you guys and working with the downtown businesses and helping Elgin continue to thrive and grow. So thanks so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Amy. Next, we have a neat presentation we're going to make. So, Amy, I'll let you introduce our visitors.
Yes, absolutely. So we are very pleased tonight to have Kimberly Garrett from the city of Georgetown. She is the TRAPS past president, which stands for Texas Recreation and Parks Society. And then Jeff White with Burdett Consultants. He is also a past president for TRAPS, which is a professional statewide group for Parks and Recreation. And on our part, Elgin has earned some awards thanks to some really great work on the part of Elizabeth and her staff. And so here they are.
Good evening. Like Amy said, I'm Kimberly Garrett. I'm a close by resident, sorta. I'm in the city of Georgetown. I'm the Parks and Recreation Director there. And it's a pleasure for me to be here tonight. You have some amazing staff in your Parks and Recreation Department, and that was recently demonstrated at our annual conference that we held virtually on March 10th. It was supposed to be in Frisco, but it was a virtual celebration and a virtual conference. So I'd like to just take a little bit of time to tell you about the awards that they won and kind of brag on your staff for a little bit. First, I'd like to present the Arts and Humanities Achievement Award for Class 4 to the City of Elgin for free weekly activity books. So at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, just a little over a year ago, the Elgin Parks and Rec Department created free weekly activity books for children and families to be able to explore different elements of play and child development over 7 days of activities that range from arts and crafts to educational materials, all free of charge for members of your community. And the primary focus of these books was to create opportunities for hands-on learning and exploration through arts, crafts, and games provided at all hours to reduce the barriers families faced when COVID-19 first triggered quarantine orders in late March of 2020. So this award, again, is for the Arts and Humanities Achievement Award for Class 4. And just to let you know, different cities across the state submit award applications based on their size. They're categorized into size of their population. So based on other cities of similar size, y'all won that award. So congratulations.
Great job.
So the second award is actually the Lone Star Recreation Programming Achievement Award. And this is a high award that's honored at the Texas Recreation and Park Society. And it was awarded in Class 5. And it's actually presented for the best new first-time recreation program in a community. And the winning program was the City of Elgin's Cardboard Boat Race, which is what is pictured here. And during the virtual award ceremony that we did, we saw some of these pictures. So I don't know if y'all were able to participate, but the first ever cardboard boat race was hosted in Elgin over last summer in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. So families were looking for something to do, outdoors of course, to keep busy, keep entertained, so they could team up in groups of up to 6 people to build a cardboard boat and compete against other members of the community. The goal of the program was to support STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and math programming, by encouraging the families and children to engineer and build a boat from cardboard and duct tape that will not only float, but it had to support their weight and be able to be paddled across your local public swimming pool. Children and families spent days preparing their boards for the race, making a plan for the boat, testing and building their design, utilizing problem-solving skills and communication skills. This made families work together, collaborate, discuss different options on how to solve the problem. They came together and built their boats. Their hypotheses were tested, and amazingly, we heard that no boat sank. So that was a success, but it was a lot of fun. So congratulations to the City of Elgin on both of these awards. We're very proud to be here to represent the Texas Recreation and Park Society. I just finished my presidency. I'm now the past president. And like I said, Jeff White followed me. He's the past president of our statewide organization. We represent over 2,500 members across the state of Texas in the Parks and Recreation profession. So you should be very proud of your staff and the awards that they've won.
Thank you all very much for coming, and congratulations, everyone. That's very nice.
Nice work. Amy has one other little thing she's going to share with us.
I do. So we have 2 kind of recognition awareness things. This week is National Library Week. And so we encourage you to tune in on our social media channels and check out the great fun things that our library is doing this week tied into National Library Week. And it's just an extra bonus that you got to meet your new library director tonight. And then on a more serious note, April is Child Abuse Awareness Month, and our police department and the Community Services Division are working together with Children's Advocacy Center, which serves Bastrop, Lee, and Fayette counties, to increase awareness. And we encourage you to look for blue ribbons and blue pinwheels, and there will be a blue-themed window decor contest downtown during April. And there are freshly planted flowers in our front library bed and in one of the areas, the Tree Grove area at Elgin Memorial Park, that were all placed just this afternoon by volunteers. And this is all in an effort to increase awareness about child abuse, and you can wear blue in April as well. Thanks.
Thanks, Amy. Mayor, that's the extent of my report, unless anybody had any general questions for me tonight that we didn't address already.
Council? Okay, let's move on in the agenda. Next is item number 7, consent agenda. All of the items on the consent agenda are considered to be self-explanatory by the council and will be enacted with one motion, 1 second, and 1 vote. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member removes an item from the consent agenda and places it on the new business for discussion and action. So we have 4 items under the consent agenda. Item number 1, the city council minutes from March 23rd, 2021. Item number 2, consider the request to close streets for the Western Days Festival Parade on Saturday, June 26th from 8 a.m. to noon. Item number 3, consider request to waive open container ordinance for Western Days Festival, June 25th, 2021 from 6 p.m. to 12:15 a.m. and Saturday, June 26th from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. in Elgin Memorial Park. The last item under the consent agenda is item number 4, consider waiving or reducing fees for costs associated with Western Days Festival and Parade. I'll take a motion to pass all items under the consent agenda unless my council member wants to pull one out.
I'll second.
So the motion has been made by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher, seconded by Councilmember Dennis. The vote, Mayor Pro Tem Brasher?
Gonzalez, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Henson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. We're moving on to new business. Tom, I'm gonna make one quick change. I wanna go ahead and do item number 1 under new business, and then we're gonna move item number 5 up. So item number 1, which is, if you'll go ahead.
Do you want me to read it? An ordinance changing the name of Hickory Lane to Hop Tree Lane within the Woodlawn subdivision, providing for a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions.
So we have 2 public comments under item number 8, new business, item 1. Grant Hennig. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. John? John Kraft? State your name and address, please, John.
John Kraft, and I'm 121 Hickory Lane. I've also got property on 117. I happen to be a woodworker, so I'm very familiar with different woods, and it's ironic that I live in that area, hickory and pecan. The changing of the street, I fully concur with, because I'm just short of giving maps to FedEx and everybody else, because there's definitely a conflict. My concern is the name of the street. That I don't know how it came up with Hop Lane or Hop Tree. I'm vaguely familiar with Hop Tree. It's kind of a trash tree. I don't know if it needs to be a tree that starts with the letter H. If it needs to be I'm sure it needs to be a tree, because the entire subdivision is tree related. I think we have hickory and plum, pecan, and I think we have live oak or post oaks. What I would like to do is name a tree that's more indigenous maybe, or something it could be hackberry. It could be pecan. Let me think. It could be hickory. Oh, let me see. I wrote it down. Hickory trail maybe, for example. It doesn't have to be, obviously, I'm just saying, besides the tree that somebody came up with, it would be great. And there's a lot of residents there that do not own the property. I'm one of them that does own it. There's a lot of renters there. So to them, it's probably not a big issue. I know the gentleman at the very end of the street, he wasn't even aware of it. He lives on 129 Hickory Lane. And it just seems like it was late last week, they received something saying there's going to be a name change. And I'm very grateful there is going to be a name change. I just wish that the residents that live there would have some kind of, some say-so in it. I really do. And again, it could be anything. And I don't know how that name of that tree came up. And I can come up with a bunch of tree names. I can come up with tree names that start with H's. And if council would consider maybe perhaps another tree, that would be awesome. And that's all I have. But I do agree with the change, don't get me wrong. It needs to happen. Thank you.
Mr. Hennig?
He's a master, he'll kill us. All right, yeah, I did walk the street today because there's only 6 people live on the street. So I knocked on every door today, and I met this gentleman here, never met him before, and he's another resident that wasn't approached or wasn't considered when y'all make a decision. And that tends to happen over and over again. We're just talking about stop signs, put them up all over the city because the residents wanted it. But we didn't consult the residents at all what they wanted their street to be named. We just decide on a name. I think they should have an input into this decision. We do all agree it needs to change because it's dangerous to have 2 streets named the same name across town from each other. But his wife, I met his wife as well, and it could be, Hickory Trails, Hickory Path. It doesn't have to even change from Hickory. It just needs another. I live on Robin Road, and there's a Robin Street over by the old high school. I mean, there's 2 Robins in Elgin as well, but they're different endings. So I just want y'all to consider that. Also, I'd like y'all to pull the ordinance for tonight because it's incorrect. Y'all say there's 5 houses. There's actually 6 on that street. It's 2 different subdivisions. One is it's Woodlawn subdivision, which actually has 5 houses. Then there's a separate house at 129 Hickory that y'all did not contact. He's in the Christensen subdivision. So it's a different platting of the land there. So y'all didn't even notify one of the residents that this was going to happen. Also, I think y'all need to think into the monetary consideration of what it's going to cost all these people to change their deeds on their homes, their driver's license, all their credit cards, their car titles, everything they own is going to have to change. So I would consider maybe I'll reimburse these people for having to go through all these monetary changes for everything they're going to have to do to take on a new name. It's going to be expensive for them. But I do request y'all to pull the ordinance because it is incorrect. Y'all missed a house, and it's actually not only the Woodlawn subdivision, it's actually the other portion for 129 is called the Christian Thomas Acres. It's a little subplat at 129 Hickory. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, taking all that into consideration, item 1 under new business is an ordinance changing the name of Hickory Lane to Hoptree Lane within the Woodlawn subdivision, providing for a savings clause and repealing conflicting ordinances and resolutions. Council, do you have any comments or questions? Go ahead, Tom.
I just want to clarify for the record, the only reason we're doing this is the county asked us to, and the county is the one that came up with the name, so I don't know what Hoptree is. They gave us an explanation about it. They're the ones that, excuse me, raised the issue about the conflicts. The ordinance is correct. We contacted the property owners according to the record. We wrote them all letters. We've given that in the packet. I would just say that I don't think that they're simply trying to address this conflict that the resident talked about. There's an area resident there. And likewise, that if we change the other Hickory Lane, that would have affected 32 property owners. And so that's why they ask us that it would only affect the 5 property owners.
Right.
So it's not, we're simply trying to, go ahead, David.
It's 5 lots, actually. There's 6 buildings, but there's 2 buildings on 1 lot at the end.
Okay.
According to BCAD records.
So we have notified all the property owners in writing that we would be talking about this tonight, so. As you remember, we did that as a courtesy between now and then, but I don't think there's any particular time-sensitive issue here. Like I said, we got asked to do this by the county, that's why we brought it forward. So if we want to talk more about what would be a good name, from the staff perspective, we certainly don't have any resistance to that.
I'd be in favor of changing the name. I think rather than wrangle through that here in this public meeting, that we get together with the residents or whatever, and if there's not a real urgency to get this done tonight, I know this is the second time it's been on the agenda, but if there's not an urgency, I'd say let's take care of business and
No, I think if,
bring it back.
as council knows, and anybody who was here at the last meeting, we all agreed the most important thing was that we make sure that people know what was happening before we did it. That's why we've taken this extra step. So if someone else wants to accept the responsibility for coming up with the right name that everybody will love out there, then we welcome that. No, we'd be glad for you to tell us that.
Keep in mind that the county has to agree.
Yeah,
Alright.
if they pick, they might want to choose one and an alternate, because then you're gonna have to go back to county and say, okay, does this one work, right?
Right.
And make sure there's not a duplicate somewhere else.
That's
again.
correct. That's correct.
It might,
Critical thing, there not be a duplicate in the zip code.
it might be a good idea too, probably safer for us if the county facilitates that discussion about entertaining additional names. You know, otherwise, even if we take that on, I would want to include someone from the county to ensure that we would be going about that properly.
Okay.
But I would consider perhaps propose county can facilitate that discussion.
So what do I hear about the motion? Well, I mean, about the ordinance.
I don't think action's really required. We can bring it back like we
We
did
don't
last
need to
time.
have a motion to table.
You can
it.
motion to table, be fine too.
I'd make that motion to table it to the next meeting until we can get these issues resolved.
So who is going to contact who? If we're
Well,
gonna-
the staff will take care of all that.
Okay. You made the motion?
I did.
Second.
Okay. Motion made by Councilmember Dennis, seconded by Councilmember Pinson. Mr. Dennis, if you'll start the vote.
Dennis, yes?
Frazier, yes?
Gonzalez, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Benson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, instead of going to item number 2, I'm going to bring item number 5 up, which is a presentation from PHI Air Medical.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, council members. I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little bit about PHI Air Medical and some of the things that we have to offer. First of all, my name is Kenny Kerr, and I handle the membership sales. James Green was here earlier. He is our air medical base supervisor. He did have to leave, so, but hopefully, if we have any questions for him, I can try to assist a little bit, and then we can come back later with some answers. Just a little bit of information about PHI. Who are we? Kind of what do we do in the community? We're a leading helicopter company providing critical care resources into your community and communities just like yours all across the nation. We've been in business for over 70 years, and we started in the oil and gas industry. Many folks might know us from that industry, but in the late 80s, we moved into the air medical side, air medical transport side, and we continue to work in that side, providing your first responders in your community with the support that they need. We're headquartered out of Phoenix, Arizona, and we have over 60 bases nationally. And each of our bases are staffed 365 days a year, 24 hours a day with our medical staff. And then we'll talk a little bit tonight about our PHI Cares membership program. I'll tell you a little bit about it and how that works and kind of what we're going to talk about as it relates to our city-wide type programs. You'll move to the next slide. I think I've warned you, I'll be
That's
kind
all
of all over the board there. So this is just a quick quick list of our Texas bases. I said we had over 60 nationally. We have 18 bases located here in Texas. You'll notice of course, the closest one here is Cedar Creek. That base will serve this area the closest. Probably in the most closest area here serving you guys will be Victoria, Columbus, Temple, College Station. Those will probably be the next closest aircraft bases to this area. If you'll move to the next slide, please. You'll see here our national service areas. We've got a great presence in the south, southwest, as well as up in the upper north, northeast areas as well. In each of our medical bases will serve around a 200-mile range as well, and that will be mostly for interfacility type calls. Next slide, please. Just to talk a little bit about the folks that service our base. Each of the bases is staffed with a pilot, a mechanic, a flight nurse, and a flight paramedic. Each of those folks is licensed and credentialed in each of their respective areas. One thing about our flight paramedics and our flight nurses is that they are trained as well in the areas of trauma, high-risk OB, pediatrics, cardiac, and stroke care, as well as other areas, primarily to serve in those traumatic scene flights as well as those interfacility calls. Again, highly trained and experienced. One thing I'd like to point out is that we do hire the best and the brightest out there, and we continually train and keep that training up to date, and we like to keep those folks the best and the brightest out there. All of our base employees are, of course, your neighbors, and we have the local base here in Bastrop County, so of course they work here and they shop here, but many times the base employees oftentimes grew up here, and that, of course, that's the case with Scooter. He didn't grow up here, but he spent or Scooter, James Green. He spent a great amount of time here. His family has grown up here. So we have a lot of those base employees that are the fabric of our communities. And they spend a great deal of time not just working here, but they build families here or in the communities that their bases are in. And then we also, as our bases and our base employees, spend a great deal of time training hospital employees. They work with our first responders in each of our communities and offer training in landing zone classes, a lot of our certifications, and they do all of those things as well. Next slide. So just a quick look at the industry in general. As an industry, the air medical transport industry sees about 550,000 air medical transport flights a year, and that rolls down to about one flight every minute. We continue to see the demand for air medical transport. We continue to see that grow, and there's several reasons for that. Typically, rural health resources continue to close. We see those continue to close year after year. But a couple of other things, not all hospitals are equipped with all of the resources. Not all hospitals have a burn unit or a cardiology unit or a neurology specialty unit. So that's where we see a lot of what we call interfacility transports. So we've got a lot of great hospitals out there, but a lot of times we see a lot of interfacility transports to a level of care where they'll take care of those specialty type cases. And then with medical advances, we see a lot of protocols where, due to the fact that data suggests that the faster that certain types of patients get to care, the better the outcome will be. So for instance, cardiac and stroke patients, the faster they get to care, the better their life will be after that incident. We call that the golden hour. So we're learning more and more about those things, and typically those things will increase your demand. So why do we look at membership programs, and why do we have those in place? What we found is that, well, first of all, we do know that we fly in the area. We do know that we service this area, and PHI is very aware of the fact that there may be some financial costs to an air medical flight. And so our membership program is very valuable. It's a very valuable tool to those that do sign up, and it's a great way for us to allow folks to take advantage of the financial, to relieve them of the financial burden. But we also know that many health insurance policies do have the very high deductibles and provide limited benefits for medical transports. So membership is a way to ease that financial burden. And I've given a couple of, for instances there. The Medicare patient with the Part B supplement, the average out-of-pocket is still $1,500. And traditionally, the national average for an out-of-pocket cost is around $10,000. That's the national average. So just taking a look at the membership program benefit and what we have to offer. And this is the PHI Cares portion of the program. Our PHI Cares program, on our membership, just a general overview of the membership program benefit. It does cover the unpaid portion of your PHI Air Medical Services if you were flown. It provides unlimited transports by PHI and an unlimited financial coverage for PHI flights. There are no co-payments, deductibles, or out-of-pocket expenses for your PHI flights. It does cover an unlimited number of family members residing at your same address and up to 3 non-family members. And then there are no restrictions for pre-existing conditions, and it does also cover scene flights as well as interfacility transports or interfacility calls. So what we have, what we'd love to look at for the City of Elgin is the citywide membership program. These programs have become popular. What we call our citywide and our countywide programs, they're limited scope programs. We do offer multitude of membership type options, but our citywide and our countywide programs have become popular because they do offer membership for a broad scope of residents. Under the citywide membership program, the rate would be based on the total number of households by a roster. And then it would cover all the residents of the incorporated city. And it does cover them regardless of their insurance status. And it would cover the resident if they were transported from the city or from Bastrop County or Travis County, because we do know that part of this city falls within both counties. And then if a resident would like to upgrade, they could upgrade at their own expense for an additional $45 per household. And the upgrade would, at that point, allow them to be eligible for national coverage for our national program, and would allow them to have benefits at any of our programs nationally. So the limited scope program would just cover them for transports locally, Bastrop, Travis County, as well as the city of Elgin. Would love to be considered for the program. It is a low-cost type program. I don't know if we want to talk about that, or.
Yeah, quickly, yeah, let's go into a little bit of that, yes.
So the program itself is, again, based on a roster. We'd kind of gotten a roster back in October-ish, maybe September, October. Based at the number that we had received before, I think it would be right at $8 per household. Well, it would be at $8 per household. It is based on a sliding scale, so the more residents you have, the lower the rate goes. We would want to take a look at a definite roster, just to make sure we're still on that same number. But I think $8 per household is going to get us the right, which is going to be the number of households that we're looking at. Any questions, anything that I can answer, any comments?
So what, basically what PHI offers, if I understand, is you're coming to the city and saying we could cover the residents inside the city limits.
Yes.
Whether it's 2,000 households or 2,500 households, whatever it happens to be, for roughly, and there's no definite, for roughly $8 a household.
Yes.
And you have this program in other places.
Right. Currently, the city of Smithville and the city of Bastrop currently have the program. Bastrop just renewed for their second year, and then the city of Smithville, they're deciding tonight. So I'm pretty sure that will happen, but.
So, Tom, you may have more data than I do, but we're talking roughly 2,500 homes, or not quite there yet?
It's at least that. I guess I have to figure out what definition of household means.
Right, so we had received a roster which looked like about 3,500, 3,586 is what we originally had. But I'm not sure if we need to reevaluate those
Okay,
rosters.
and we don't need definite figures, but that gives us a round figure, 3,500 basically, maybe.
Yeah.
So that's 25,000 roughly,
28.
28,000,
29.
something like
Yeah,
that.
I think that's
Okay.
probably about right.
Okay. And council, all I wanted you to do is have an opportunity to hear the presentation from PHI, and understand that they're offering this. And of course, we're not even gonna consider this until the budget, the new budget comes out. It's not something that we would try to do halfway through this. But I wanted you to have the opportunity to listen to the presentation. Do y'all have questions maybe for, yes, Thomas?
I was just wondering, so, you were saying, it covers residents for transport originating within the incorporated city of Elgin and from Bastrop and Travis County. So if an Elgin resident is shopping in Bastrop or Austin and needs air transport, it would cover it, or only within the city limits?
No, so So yes, if they were shopping, if a resident were shopping in Austin, as long as they were within Travis County and they needed a transport, they would be covered,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
Yes.
And the nearest base is in Travis County?
So the nearest base to this location is in Cedar Creek. And we do provide air support for this area, so, for all of Bastrop County, so.
So what does that do to response time? Say there's a, you know, multi-car crash or whatever, and we need air support. How long would it take you to get here to get somebody to a hospital?
So what the membership program does do is it provides, it actually provides a program if someone is flown. It's not gonna be a guarantee that we're going to be there. So I don't know the best way to explain it. I did check flight time. Cedar Creek to Elgin is a 6-minute time, but if we, if for some reason, I'm not sure exactly what you're asking.
I just know Cedar Creek is not in Elgin, so.
Right.
If we need something urgently, how quickly can you be here? You said 6 minutes.
Yeah.
The rules don't change. No,
Right.
it's not like somebody can call for an air ambulance just because they want to.
Right.
Yeah, the rules don't change,
Yeah,
right?
they don't.
Yes.
It still will be a first responder that calls. It's not an individual that calls. It's, it's a first responder that always calls. And, and the rules don't change, so.
Kelly, real quick, I think we talked about this a little bit before. What about, is Bastrop County, I assume you've made a pitch to them?
As far as Bastrop County, we have spoken with them, but we haven't made a second follow-up conversation.
But you make it, we're talking about drawing a line at the city limits line, right?
Yes, it is.
So you can
it
have
would
a
be-
situation if the county's not participating, literally somebody across the road you'd say no to,
Well,
if they're
they'll still
outside the
receive-
city.
They'll still receive service, so nothing changes as far as,
I mean, if they're a
service.
county resident?
They'll just be billed.
They'll just be billed.
Oh, okay, I think.
Right, so nothing changes as far as service goes. Everyone will still receive air medical transport service just like they always have. There's no change in the way people receive service. It's just going to be that person will receive a bill as opposed to someone that's inside the city limit that will
Thank
not
you.
receive.
And to reemphasize what Councilmember Ibis said, if an Elgin resident inside the city limits happens to be in Austin or happens to be somewhere in Travis County or Bastrop County, they're still covered. They don't have to physically be in Elgin transported. They'd be covered as long as they were eligible under this plan, and even if they're in Travis County,
Right,
even if they were shopping in Austin or doing whatever in Austin.
that's right.
Okay. Council, any more questions or comments?
And one of the big values of the program is interfacility calls. So a lot of folks think of air medical transport as a scene call only. You have an accident, you're on the side of the road, that sort of thing. But a lot of the value of a membership program is in interfacility transport. You're at the hospital, they request that you be moved to a different hospital. Those are very valuable uses of the membership program, and having that ability to utilize that membership from Travis or Bastrop County will be extremely valuable.
So do you serve Elgin already?
We do.
And how many transports in the last year or 18 months have you had from Elgin?
I do not know, to be honest. Scooter or James, our operations person, will probably have, well, he will have that information, and it's definitely some information that I can get back to you guys with.
Single digits or triple digits, or do you have any idea?
I do not know, I apologize.
So that's something that you can pass, research and then pass back to the council?
Yes, I can get some
Okay.
information back to you.
Anybody else? Do you have anything else to add?
Nope, I don't, if there are no questions.
Thank you so much for taking the time and coming to give us the presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity, I appreciate it.
Let's move back to item number 2 under new business, a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute a contract between the city of Elgin, Texas and Watkins Consulting for fire code plan review and fire inspections. Mr. Mattis?
Thank you, Mayor. This item is a routine, actually, it won't be it doesn't represent a material change in how we do things, except it should be more efficient, a little more cost-effective for us. As I think the council's aware, we don't currently have a individual in the fire marshal position in town and haven't had for some time, so we have to, those services, fire inspection, a review of plans are things that we have to also contract out. But ATS, the organization that we do all our building inspection through, they too don't have anybody on staff to do that. So they contract out with Watkins Consulting, and so we hire the same people only through a third-party agreement. So we're just cutting out the middleman in this case. It should reduce our costs, which we can convey to builders and developers, that we're just going to have an agreement straight with the individual that can do our fire code plan review inspections.
Any questions or comments on that, council? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to pass item number 2 as read.
Pinson, so moved.
Where's your second?
Councilmember Pinson made the motion, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Brasher. We'll start the vote with Councilmember Pinson.
Pinson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Where's your yes?
Gonzalez, yes.
Ramirez, yes. Motion passes unanimously. We're going to item number 3 under new business, appointment to vacancy on the Planning and Zoning Commission for a partial term.
Mayor, don't really have anything to add other than what's on the agenda. We have an individual, we have a vacancy on the Plan Commission and an application, and would like to have a full Planning Commission.
R. Scott Mackey. The Planning and Zoning. Council, do we have any questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion to pass item number 3.
So moved.
Second.
Councilmember Vega makes the motion, seconded by Councilmember Pinson. We'll start with the vote. Councilmember Vega?
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Where's your yes?
Gonzalez, yes.
Ramirez, yes.
Pinson, yes.
Motion passes unanimously. And I've made the comment before, but I'm so happy with the number of qualified, quality people that are putting in for all these board positions. So item number 4 is appointments to vacancies on the library board.
Thank you, Mayor. Same item. We've had 2 vacancies occur on the library board with 2 resignations, but we have 2 applications on for individuals willing to serve, and as in the case of the last appointment, staff contacted those individuals to make sure they're still willing to serve, and this will give us a full library board then too.
Okay, the 2 applicants, Angelica Huerta and Charlotte Herring, and if you've had a chance to read their applications, they seem very qualified and very willing to work with on this board, so. I'll take a motion to pass item 4 as read.
So moved.
So Councilmember Pinson made the motion, seconded by Councilmember Arriaga. We'll start with the vote with Councilmember Pinson.
Pinson, yes.
Vega, yes.
Prince, yes.
Ibis, yes.
Dennis, yes.
Where's your yes?
Gonzalez, yes.
Ramirez, yes. Motion passes unanimously. That's all the business under new business. At this point in time, we're going to convene into executive session. There'll be no action taken afterwards. Council members, take 5 minutes, and we'll be back for executive session.